Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. So happy to be back here in the studio. Thank you very much to Chris Check, who sat in for me over the last couple days. And welcome to Jimmy Aiken, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, who is our guest this hour. Hi, Jimmy.
Hey, how you doing?
I am very, very well, thank you. A couple days off, and almost forgot to come to the studio at 3 o'clock. I was sitting at my desk, and John yelled at me.
Okay.
No, I wasn't really going to forget, but I was cutting it a little close.
Well, you and I both, because we just recorded a show.
Yeah, right.
For next Thursday, which is All Saints Day.
Right.
And so we recorded that, and then we had it just a few minutes between shows. So
yeah,
kind of hard to fill that time.
But I know it's weird. It's weird. I go, oh, hey, I got a few minutes, and I'll do the same thing over again. But I'm glad to have you here, Jimmy. Mm-hmm. Open forum today. You
glad
know that.
to be here again for the first time.
Yes, exactly. It's weird that the thing that we just recorded will air in a week. So
we just slipped into the past.
Yep,
by slipping into the future.
Right. And time, I'm not going to do that one again.
Okay.
888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Open forum, for those who do not know, is your opportunity to ask any question you have about the Catholic faith, about Catholic people, Catholic beliefs, about the Bible, about the sacraments, about the popes, about the dogmas and doctrines of the church. About all that Catholic stuff. But also, when Jimmy's here, we will expand that out. If you have a more generally religious question or a question of a moral or philosophical nature, those are welcome as well. 888-318-7884. And who can call, Jimmy? Do you know?
Oh, anybody can call.
Really? You don't have to be Catholic to call?
No.
Oh, really?
No, of course not.
Open it up to everybody.
Open it to everybody. You do have to be polite.
Okay, not everybody knows that. I'm glad you said that. Well, we'll be polite to you if you call, and yeah, you can be polite to us, but we'll talk about anything you want. And if you maybe have something that's always bothered you about what Catholics believe, or you heard something about Catholics and you're not sure if we do believe it, all of that is welcome. 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH, if you prefer the spelled version of it. Jimmy, your brand new book,
Teaching with Authority.
Teaching with Authority is now just days away.
Right. Well, that's always literally been true. I mean, you know.
Because there's always some number of days
until it comes out.
But now we're expecting it soon. And I've seen the cover. I don't think there's at least I didn't notice that you can, sometimes you can look at a book and see inside.
Oh,
right. I didn't see that part on it.
Well, it's because it was still being typeset until very recently.
Oh, yeah.
And
okay.
so the preview wouldn't have been ready yet. But it's at the printer now, is my understanding, and we should have it back in days.
And in mere days. And what kind of questions might a book like Teaching with Authority answer?
So what are all the different kinds of church documents? How do you interpret them? What are the big mistakes people make in interpreting them? Mm-hmm. How do you rank different Catholic teachings? What's the difference between a doctrine and a dogma? What's the difference between a dogma and just a doctrine and just a theological opinion? Mm-hmm. How do you know what goes in what category? What doctrines have been infallibly proclaimed by popes in the past? What are heresies? When should you not accuse somebody of committing a heresy? Answer: in many more circumstances than people on the internet seem to realize.
So you're saying that there are unfounded claims of heresy on the internet?
Oh, yeah.
I am shocked to hear that.
Yeah. So also, how do you deal with it when you have a difficulty with something that the church teaches?
Okay.
What are your options? What are you supposed to do? If you find something a hard saying of the church, how do you deal with that?
All right, so Teaching with Authority out shortly. You can pre-order it, shop.catholic.com. Whole bunch of questions already on the line for you, Jimmy. Shall we do that?
Sure.
All right, let's go to Josiah probably, in Indianapolis, watching on YouTube Live. Thanks for watching on YouTube, Josiah. Your question for Jimmy.
Hi, I was wondering if you could give me a better version of Anselm's ontological argument for God's existence than the one that falls into the normal problem of being able to prove the existence of anything, basically.
Okay, so for people who may not be aware, St. Anselm of Canterbury was a medieval theologian and archbishop who is famous for having developed what is today called the ontological argument for God's existence. It's different from other arguments for God's existence in that it doesn't start by looking at the world. Most of the arguments for God's existence look either at the world or at some part of the world or some aspect of the world, and then reason to the existence of God as a way of explaining that part of the world. And these are broadly called cosmological arguments because they start by looking at the world or the cosmos. In the ontological argument, instead of starting by looking at the world, you start by looking at the concept of God, what it means to be God. And the basic idea that, or a common way, now, Anselm scholars are going to say there's all kinds of qualifications that need to be made that I'm not going to have time to go into here on live radio without a chalkboard. But a way that this is often presented is by saying, okay, so if you think about God, God by definition is the greatest possible being. So he's going to have all of the properties, by definition, that make one great. So he's going to have all knowledge, all power, all goodness, all these things. Now, the question is, will he have the quality of existence? Because it seems that if something exists, that makes it greater than if it doesn't exist. And so one could look at that and say, well, if you have a greatest possible being that does not exist, then by definition, it doesn't seem to be the greatest possible being, because you can imagine a greater one, namely one that does exist, that has all the same qualities and exists. Therefore, it would seem that the very concept of the greatest possible being entails its own existence. And so, according to this way of presenting the argument, if you just think about and really take seriously what the idea of a greatest possible being would mean, then it turns out that such a being must necessarily exist. It could not fail to exist. And so some truths like 1 + 1 = 2, or just we'll keep it simple, 1 + 1 = 2, are just guaranteed to be true by an analysis of the concepts involved, that the greatest possible being exists is one of those truths. That it just, the concept, if you understand it properly, guarantees that it exists, the same way that if you understand the concept of a triangle properly, it has only 3 angles. So in terms of, can I give you a better one here on the radio in a very brief space without a chalkboard? The answer, I'm guessing, is probably no. I would say there have been a lot of different versions of the ontological argument that have been proposed, and some very deep thinkers have taken this very seriously. For example, the 20th century mathematician Kurt Gödel, who's the most famous mathematician of the 20th century. He's famous for having produced Gödel's incompleteness theorem. He developed a version of the ontological argument for God's existence, and he's not the only one. A lot of famous people have done this. I can share with you that the insight that I think I have a profound intuition that the idea of a maximally perfect being must exist is true. I don't see how that could fail to be the case. Such that there is no maximally perfect, infinitely good being. I don't see how that could fail to be the case. I have a profound logical intuition on that point, but in terms of how to flesh it out in a concrete short space, I'm at a bit of a loss for how to do that. So I would suggest checking out some of the other versions, some of the other more recent ontological versions of the argument for God's existence.
And Josiah, we will leave it there. Thank you very, very much for that call. I remember that the atheist philosopher Bertrand Russell was very impressed with with Anselm's argument. He couldn't figure out how to disprove it, but he ultimately didn't believe it. He ultimately said, but it can't be correct. And he had reasons for that. I'm not just saying he quit.
Bertrand Russell is kind of an interesting thinker because he was one of the big mathematicians early on in the 20th century.
Yeah.
He was a co-author of a book where they were trying to prove the fundamental foundations of mathematics. And then Gödel came along and smashed it.
Yeah, right.
Right. I don't know what happened. I studied Russell and various aspects of his thought when I was in grad school, and when I was an undergrad. And it just seems the later in his career he went, because he kind of went from talking about mathematics to talking about religion to talking about politics, and just as he went along in his career, the quality of his thought
seemed to go down.
Degenerated. It's like he did his best work on the foundations of mathematics, and then he just got sloppier and sloppier after that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it had anything to do with his best work being smashed by Kurt Gödel. I don't know. Maybe he gave up afterwards.
Maybe
or
he
something.
just got a really good salary after that too.
Could be.
That'll make you a little work a little less hard. Our fall store-wide summer sale is on right now. I said fall summer sale. I did it again. I cannot believe that I have that little hitch in my get along. Jimmy's book, Teaching with Authority, is among the books that are on sale, and it's not out yet, but you pre-order it. You just put in the promo code CALive18 at checkout when you visit shop.catholic.com, and you'll save 20% on Jimmy's book, Teaching with Authority, and on hundreds of other items in our online store. Visit shop.catholic.com today and begin saving. Be sure to enter the promo code CALive18 at checkout to save.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
Homeschool Connections, an online provider of courses for your Catholic homeschool, is a sponsor of Catholic Answers Live. Homeschool Connections website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their faith and values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
Peggy Normandin. I was really pretty vain in my mid-20s. I was consumed with all those, superficial trappings in life. Well, during this time, I had a dream where my grandmother appeared to me. She was a very loving, plain, modest woman of great faith. Well, in the dream, she was absolutely radiant. And she said, "This is what I look like now. Everything is perfect in heaven, Peggy. This is all that matters." What a powerful spiritual wake-up call that was.
Call Me Catholic with Peggy Normandin. Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, Jimmy Akin in studio with me, and it's open forum. If you've got a question about the Catholic faith, it is welcome here. Whether you're Catholic or not, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. We go now to Caleb in Arkansas, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Thanks for downloading the app onto your phone. Caleb, your question for Jimmy.
My question is... Well, I just started RCIA, and I read Steve Ray's book, Crossing the Tiber, and he had some stuff about the Apostolic Fathers. And I'm wondering if there's anything that they wrote in the first couple of centuries about indulgences or purgatory.
Okay, in regard to indulgences, no. Indulgences didn't develop until a number of centuries later. They are an outgrowth of the penitential practice of the church during the early centuries, but it took a while for the different principles that are involved to be put together. I have an article online. If you type in Jimmy Akin and a primer or primer on indulgences, it'll come up and it'll talk about the principles and actually show you not only how they're rooted in the Church Fathers, but how they're rooted in the Bible. And so the early church fathers, although they were beginning to develop the penitential practice that led to the development of indulgences, the doctrine of indulgences was still implicit at this time. It hadn't been made explicit yet by putting the principles together, although the principles were already there. In terms of purgatory, yes, they do. We have a number of writings from the early centuries that talk about purgatory. They don't always use the name for purgatory, just like when early church fathers talk about the Trinity. They don't always use the word Trinity because that word took a while to develop. Same thing with purgatory. But they definitely talk about there being something after death where people can be purified before entering heaven. And they talk about how the various things like praying that the living can do will assist those who are undergoing this purification. Famous example is an early writing from the 2nd century called the Acts, or actually the martyrdom of Perpetua and Felicity. Perpetua and Felicity were 2 North African martyrs. They were from North Africa, and they were put to death for their faith. And Perpetua kept kind of a diary as she was in the last days of her life. And one of the things she talks about at one point is receiving a vision of her brother who had died. Her brother was named Dinocrates, if I recall correctly, and he, in his life, had like a cancer on his face that had marred his appearance, and she had received information indicating that she should pray for him after his death. And then after she prayed, she received a vision of Dinocrates now laughing and playing and drinking water and being happy in the afterlife as a result of her prayers. And so that would indicate an understanding of how the dead can have lingering things from this life that they need to take care of before they're made perfectly happy in heaven, and how our prayers can assist them in that process. Incidentally, that's also rooted in biblical principles that go back to before the time of Christ. We see it in Jewish practice, for example, at the time of the Maccabees. It's mentioned in the book of 2nd Maccabees, which is part of the Catholic Bible. But if you go to Catholic.com and type in purgatory and fathers, you'll find a tract I wrote on the subject of purgatory and the places where the church fathers discuss it. You can also find that same work, although in a kind of improved version, in my book, The Fathers Know Best, where I show on 50 different topics what the church fathers said, not only on purgatory, but on various other distinctive Catholic doctrines as well.
Okay, Caleb?
All right. Do you mind if I ask one more quick question?
Real quick.
Okay. Being from a Pentecostal background, how do I integrate those beliefs into the Catholic beliefs? Or do I just have to leave all that behind, or how does that work?
Well, so it's going to depend on what kind of Pentecostal background you have. Now, if you were a oneness Pentecostal, that's something that would have to be left behind because the Catholic Church obviously believes in the Trinity. If you're a Trinitarian Pentecostal, then you don't have to leave that behind. In terms of belief in ongoing spiritual gifts like miracles and healings and speaking in tongues, the Catholic Church acknowledges that God sometimes gives those to people. So there have been reports of visions and miracles and miraculous gifts all the way down through the different ages of church history. The Catholic Church has never had a problem with that. It does recognize that there's a role for spiritual discernment in figuring out how these gifts should be used and when they're genuine versus sometimes is it just somebody's imagination. But the Catholic Church has always acknowledged that God does continue to give miraculous gifts in every age of the church, and that's not something you would need to leave behind.
Caleb, thanks so much for that call. Hope we'll hear from you again. We do these open forums pretty much every Tuesday and Thursday, but you're always welcome to call. We'd love to get your call. If you'd like to call and talk with Jimmy right now, 888-318-7884 is the number. We go now to Daniel in Iowa, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Daniel, thank you for downloading the app. Your question for Jimmy. Thank you.
Thank you for your podcast. I love them.
Thank you.
Especially your new Mysterious World, and you got me into Doctor Who.
Oh, awesome.
So my question takes a little bit of setup.
Well, let me ask you this: if you
really
could,
should
is there
accept-
any way that Daniel, you can get closer to the phone or take it off of hands-free if it's on hands-free? Because we're getting a lot of background noise.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a wind tunnel.
Like maybe.
I'm sorry. I can call back, but
Are-
that's not legally an option for me right now.
Oh, I see.
I see.
All right.
Should I call back?
Well, could you do it in just a few minutes? Because we'll get you in this hour if you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll call you right back.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel. Just because if there's going to be if you have to tell us a little bit of a story, it would be best if we were able to hear it. Let's go to
We
Richard.
could just imagine it.
Okay. Oh, it's a good one. Oh,
Yeah.
I enjoyed imagining that story. Richard in Bay Point, California, also listening on the Catholic Answers app. The Catholic Answers app is huge today. Richard, your question for Jimmy.
Hey, how you doing? So I'm calling about baptism desire and the compatibility with the faith and actually doing something like that for, say, an aborted child or an unborn child.
Okay. So the idea of baptism of desire is something that is consistent with the faith. It's been discussed for centuries. For people who may not be aware, the idea is that in cases where the original idea historically was that in cases where someone, let's say, was a catechumen and they were preparing to become a Christian, and so they believed the Christian faith and they wanted to be baptized and thus desired baptism. That's why it's called baptism of desire. But let's say they died before they were able to receive it. Maybe they were even martyred in the early days before they could receive baptism. Well, because they accepted the Christian faith and they were planning on being baptized and they had every intention and it wasn't their fault they weren't baptized, the church discerned that God would treat this person's desire for baptism as a sufficient basis for letting them into heaven. And so receiving the sacrament of baptism was not strictly necessary to get into heaven, as long as you otherwise, desired it and embraced the Christian faith and so on. Over the course of the centuries, it's been further discerned that there are people who, even though they don't know about the Christian faith necessarily, or at least haven't embraced it through no fault of their own, they would have, if they knew about it, if they understood, okay, this is true, I need to do this, they would have embraced it. And thus they would have desired baptism if they knew about, they need to be baptized. And so even though they don't have an explicit desire for baptism, they have an implicit one because they desire to do what they need to please God and be with Him and so on. They just don't know that that's baptism and being a Christian. So they have an implicit desire for baptism and being a Christian. What they explicitly desire maybe just, I want to do what I should. They just don't know that means these other things. And so the church has indicated that baptism of desire, whether it's an explicit desire or an implicit desire, can be sufficient for salvation as long as, it's not through any fault of your own that you haven't embraced the Christian faith and been baptized. In terms of applying this to an unborn or aborted baby, it's a matter of theological speculation. There have been people who have said, God could do a kind of proxy baptism of desire, where maybe if the parents desire, salvation on behalf of a child who dies without baptism, maybe God can count the parents' desire for that child's salvation as a kind of baptism of desire. Or, if not the parents, somebody else. Or the church. The church's desire, because the church wants everybody to be saved. So the church has that desire for every baby who dies without baptism. This is something where we haven't been told the answer by God. We, at least as far as we've discerned thus far, we haven't found a conclusive answer about this, and so it's a matter of theological speculation. It's certainly not unhelpful to say, God, if I can in any way assist the salvation of these children by praying for them, I want to pray for them. but it's also not guaranteed that that's going to do anything for them, because God simply hasn't told us the answer here.
Richard, thank you so much for that call. Very, very welcome here. Very happy that you were able to call. Hope that was helpful. We'll go back to Daniel after the break in Iowa. We'll see if we got a little bit better connection with him. But just that thing about where you said, well, it's a theological speculation. Mm-hmm. That's one of those things that'll be covered in your book, huh? About
yeah. In fact, I have a case study on limbo and the salvation of unborn children that is, or unbaptized children, that's in the book. Yeah.
And that book is Teaching with Authority. That's Jimmy's new book coming out. I think I might be more excited about it than Jimmy. I don't know. Well, he's read it. I haven't read it, so there's a reason for that.
I'm already spoiled.
I'll be right back with Jimmy and your questions after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture's moral center continues to fly apart, and with every form of deviance publicly aired and celebrated, we have no choice but to equip our kids to understand about such issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level, to meet the world's challenges. Silence can no longer be an option. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging on to the shop at Catholic.com.
The world is changing. The days of picking up a book or popping a DVD or compact disc in the player have given way to the digital age. The good news is that the shop at Catholic.com has joined the digital revolution. Check out the new digital platform at shop.catholic.com, where all of our DVDs, books, and audio products are now available in digital form for you to purchase and download at your convenience, anywhere you go. For that matter, anywhere in the world. We've got hundreds of offerings, so visit shop.catholic.com today and check out our selection. That's shop.catholic.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Before we went to the break, we were trying to talk with Daniel at in Iowa on the Catholic Answers app. But I think we have a clear signal now. Daniel, you there with us?
It's just Iowa, not Iowa, California. So.
No, I know.
On the CA app.
But I had said, it's just me reading what's in front of me wrongly. Daniel, I apologize for that. I'm getting way better at reading, though. I want you to know, I've been working on my reading. I'm getting better at it.
He's going to work on math next.
No, I am not going to work on math. Daniel, what was your question for Jimmy?
Thank you for your patience, gentlemen. So it basically boils down to, well, what should my wife and I do in this situation with our kids and their trans uncle who presents himself as a woman? Now, a little bit of family history. We were all raised Catholic, not really catechized that well at home. I'm sure you've never heard that before.
I'm stunned.
And so in college, I'm the oldest of 7. So in college, one of my younger brothers decided that he was trans, and another one of my brothers just like aggressively supports him so much that when the one who's trans, David, stopped talking to us, so did the other one, Drew. He stopped talking to the rest of it. And this went on for like 5 years, when he first came out. So 5 years there, the beginning of my marriage, had no contact with my brother, and I was angry at first, and then I just miss him. then we have kids. The oldest is 5, another one is 3, another one is 1. And, one weekend they were going to Grandma and Grandpa's, and my parents didn't tell us, there's a chance that David and his partner, Keegan, who is biologically female, but also trans, they didn't tell us that, they might be coming over. So my 3 sons, might have been it might have just been Yule or 2 at that point, met Devin in a dress for the first time without us, without our consent, our knowledge. And so we've just kind of been, going along with it with just a little bit of reservation for the last year or so. And my brother is just, aside from all this, he's just really fickle and emotional, takes offense at the drop of a hat. I've got to apologize for what I believe, what I think, my political views, etc. And the next conversation that we need to have is with my parents. My poor mother. It's like she lost a child for 5 years.
So, is your concern about what to do with your children?
Or about the situation more broadly?
Well, it could mean that we miss holidays.
Okay.
At my parents. Or, and now this is on his shoulders, if that David might just decide not to come if we're there. Well, actually, that's the ultimatum he gave me for one of my just offhand comments. I thought a political bumper sticker was funny, and he just took inordinate offense at it. And so I have to talk to my mother and say, we're pulling the kids back from contact with David and Keegan because of the scandal that they represent.
So you've already made that decision?
We've made the decision. We need to have the conversation. So what's...
No.
It's kind of a contest of values.
Have you made the decision that you are not going to let your children have contact with your brother? Is that a decision you've made, or is that still open to discussion?
No, that's a decision that we've made. We're going to be severely limiting or refraining altogether from letting them see their uncle.
Okay. So your question then?
As long as it continues. Is it... What's the linchpin here? Is it, the good of my children versus my relationship with my brother? The good of my children versus, lessening relationship with my parents?
Okay, there's no single answer here. Ultimately, all human beings are equal in God's sight. So God loves your parents, and God loves you and your wife, and God loves your children, and God loves your brother, and God loves your brother's significant other. God loves all of these people, and ultimately we're all equal in His sight. And so there's not an ultimate difference in terms of whose interests need to be promoted. There is, however, by natural law, a relative difference in terms of whose interests need to be promoted, and that's to be determined by multiple factors. One of the factors is your relationship within the family. You have a stronger duty to your children than you do to your parents or your brothers because they are directly under your care. Your parents, you have a stronger duty towards in the abstract than you do your brother, because your parents are going to, in some way, at least historically, biologically, going to need your care in their old age in a way that your brothers presumably won't, all things being equal. All things, however, are not always equal. So who you have the greatest deference to or the greatest concern for in the abstract does not mean it overrides all their other considerations. There are other considerations like who needs your help the most at the moment. You can imagine where, let's suppose, even though in the abstract, you owe deference or special care to your parents because they, on average, will age and need your care in a way that your brother, who's roughly your same age, won't. Well, suppose your brother gets hit in a car wreck and becomes a quadriplegic and needs round-the-clock care, whereas your parents are still out and active and don't. Well, that could shift who you need to be providing care for at the moment away from the abstract in a particular case. So in addition to looking at these abstract obligations, which would be first to children, second to parents, third to siblings, you also need to look at who has the greatest needs, not just physically, but spiritually, and who do I have the greatest opportunity to help. So it may be the case someone has a huge spiritual need and you're in a great position to help them. Or it may be someone has a huge spiritual need, but there's really nothing you can do for them, but there is something you can do for someone else whose need may not be as great. So somehow you need to think about and pray about the situation and discern where the greatest needs are and where you have the greatest ability to help. Obviously, you have the ability to help your children in a way you don't necessarily have the ability to help your parents or your siblings, based on the levels of defensiveness you've mentioned or have not mentioned in this conversation. Sounds to me like your brother and one of your other siblings are the ones who you may, at the moment, have the least ability to help. And in those cases, I would say be patient, do your best to get along with everybody, do your best to be loving towards everybody, but ultimately you need to take care of the needs of those people that you can help. I'm not going to tell you what those needs are. You know the situation in your family better than I do, so I wouldn't presume to judge that. But those are the principles that I would bring to bear here. I would also mention, that even though it can be reasonable for a time to shield young children from knowledge of certain situations, that ultimately your job is not to shield children from all knowledge of these things until they're adults and suddenly turn them loose in the world. Because they will encounter things contrary to their faith out there in the world. Your job is not just to shield children, it's also to prepare children to engage situations in the world that you know they will need to confront. Apropos of that, I would recommend getting a copy of the book by Layla Miller and Trent Horn that we just came out with called Made This Way, which is designed specifically to help teach children about situations like this. I'm sure it also contains material that could be of use to you and your wife in reflection. In terms of talking to your brother, I would say the first thing I would stress to him, and I'd stress this to your parents too, is I love you. I love you. I want to have a relationship with you to the extent that's possible, and I don't want there to be hard feelings. If I can treat you with respect, but it also means you're going to need to treat me with respect, and that means not flying off the handle at every disagreement we have. That's not treating me with respect. You wouldn't want me to fly off the handle with you at every disagreement either. So I do love you, and I hope we can have a decent relationship together. I'm going to do my part to enable that to happen, and then it puts the burden on him to do his part to enable that to happen as well. In terms of if you can't deal with your brother and you decide we're going to have to pull back, then I would go to my parents. I'd go to the parents and say, look, I love everybody. I love him. I want to maintain a relationship. We need to be able to do so in a way that respects my family as well as the choices that he's made. And right now, given the situation, that means we're not going to be able to have our kids around at the same time. So I want to have a relationship with you, my parents. I don't expect you to cut him off, but we may need to have some kind of scheduling system we work out so that my family can have a relationship with you and you can have a relationship with him And we may need to do some kind of creative scheduling to enable that to happen. But I want to do my part to make this work for all of us to the extent I best can.
Daniel, if you'll hang on for a quick sec, Marie will get your digits and we'll send you a copy of Made This Way. I think it will be very helpful to you. At least I hope it will be, and thank you so much for that call.
I hope that helps.
Right now, we're giving away a free ebook, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment. We'd like you to have it. You just go over to our Catholic Answers Facebook page. You sign up there, and you get the free ebook. That's how it works. Go to Facebook, look up Catholic Answers, go to our page. You'll see a free ebook banner, Demons, Deliverance, and Discernment, and it is yours for the asking.
Hello, this is Bishop Jeffrey Monforton, Bishop of the Diocese of Steubenville. Make sure you keep it on Catholic Answers Live. God bless you.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
That retreat absolutely lit me on fire. Your talks and the spiritual counseling, I just want to learn so much about it. And as a parent of 3 boys, what can I research to continue that fire, to impart that on my boys?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Do you love praying for people? Have you ever wanted to use your gift of prayer to share Jesus with others and build up the body of Christ? Start a public prayer station with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Listen to people's needs, pray with them, or invite them to meet you at church. St. Paul Street Evangelization can help you get started. Find out how at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Open forum both hours today on Catholic Answers Live. If you got a question about the Catholic faith, this is your day. If you're Catholic, you can call. If you're not Catholic, you can call. If you're trying to make up your mind whether or not you're Catholic, you can call as well, 888-318-7884. If you like the spelled version of it, it's 888-31-TRUTH. Jimmy Akin here with us this hour. Next hour, Mark Brumley, the president of Ignatius Press, will be here to take your calls. So don't go anywhere. If we get to the end of this hour and you're on the line, just stay there. Let's go to Mark in Denton, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio, 91.7 FM. Mark, your question for Jimmy.
Yes. Hi, this is Mark.
You're on the air. Mark, what's your question?
Well, I just wanted to begin. I've spent the last few years researching the history and genealogy of altar bread and its relation to the Eucharist generally within the multitude of rites.
Okay.
My question is, how do you feel or how do you reconcile the notion or the reality that the majority of altar breads produced today, especially in the Western world, are made with fully automated technology, advertised explicitly as not touched by human hands, with the notion that we have the work of human hands and, like, by the sweat of your brow shall you have bread to eat, stuff like that.
I don't think that there is an issue here that is decisive one way or another. It's true that in the liturgy we have the line about work of human hands, but even if most altar breads are mechanically made these days, that's just an extension. When in the Bible, when you have language like made by hands versus not made by hands, it doesn't mean made by human hands versus made by machine. The difference is made by humans versus made by God. So if something is said to be not made by hands, you shouldn't think, ooh, a robot made it. You should think, oh, God made it. And so that's the real division. So if there's a machine in an abbey somewhere that's stamping out hosts out of dough, and then they're being on a conveyor belt fed into an oven to bake them, they're still made by human hands for the theological purpose, because it was human hands that made the machines that are involved here. So I don't think there's any particular theological issue here. We don't have a mandate as part of the apostolic tradition to you must not use machines in making in making altar breads. In fact, it's assumed that we're going to use tools of some kind in making altar breads, because breads in the first century, you had implements on which you would prepare the dough and knead the dough and roll out the dough and bake the dough, and so tools were involved back then. If we have some extra tools available today, that doesn't change the fundamental theological dynamic. So I don't think that it's particularly theologically significant one way or the other.
And Mark, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. I hope that was helpful to you. We move now to Lewis in Brooklyn, New York, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Lewis, your question for Jimmy.
Yes, hello. Thank you. First, I wanted to say that, Jimmy, I think that your book comes at a perfect time, because this is actually the question of authority has been in my mind these past few weeks. So I'm
awesome.
definitely going to pick up your book.
Thank you.
And yeah, so I guess my question is, I wanted to know, is there any what are the characteristics of the visible church? So is there any minimum characteristics that one could look at and recognize and say, this is the church?
Yeah.
I guess that's it.
Okay, so now in the Creed, obviously, there are the four marks of the church that are mentioned, that it's one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. The difficulty there is, how do you empirically verify those? And actually, those criteria were not proposed for purposes of visible or empirical verification. That's not what those marks are about. So it's not like you can say, ooh, let's look for a church that's one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic, and that's going to be the true church. That's not what they weren't given as a way of identifying the church. They are characteristics of the church, but that doesn't mean they're an identification checklist. If you want an identification checklist, I would base it on what we have in the New Testament, where Jesus tells St. Peter, on this rock, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So the language of binding and loosing and the language of the keys indicates that this is a visible church that has church discipline and laws. That's what binding and loosing refers to. We know that from other Jewish literature. We know this church has leaders, because that's what the symbol of the keys mean. We know that Peter was its first leader, because it's built on him. And we know it's going to exist from the first century down to today, because he said the gates of hell will not prevail against it, meaning it will never pass out of existence. So I would say, in terms of an identification checklist, we want to find a church today that's a visible church with laws and leaders who had the first leader as St. Peter, and which has existed continuously ever since the first century. And those would be the essential identity markers I would look for in trying to find where Christ Church is today.
Thanks, Lewis. Hope that's helpful. We go now to Michelle in Portland, Oregon, listening on Mater Dei Radio. Michelle, your question for Jimmy.
Hi, let me just pull over really quick. I am driving. So my question has to do with alternative medicine and utilizing that, because I know a lot of the alternative practitioners I've gone to for body work, such as massage, craniosacral, they're into New Age, and they may directly use New Age type of words or not. But I know that it's, behind a lot of thinking, and at least their own personal practices. So I was just wondering, how do you approach that as a Catholic? Is it necessary to find someone who isn't New Age, who practices that work? Do you need to avoid certain things? How do I approach that?
It's a judgment call. There are different there are different situations, I would say. For example, chiropractic medicine, and I actually was thinking about this. This is another example of something I was just recently thinking about that then providentially I'm asked about on the air.
Yeah.
This happens to me an unusual number of times. But I was just thinking about this weekend because I was prepping an episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World where I'm going to be talking about alternative medicine and things like this. Let's take the example of chiropractic medicine. Chiropractic medicine has been very controversial and originally was considered just flaky stuff because the kind of founder of modern chiropractic medicine, a guy named Palmer, had this concept that that's scientifically unverifiable, that there are these subluxations, he called them, in our bodies that need to be corrected by chiropractic therapy. And science has not found these things. But you know what? A lot of people get helped by chiropractic procedures. And I know that from firsthand experience. And back in the 90s, I had a lot of back problems. I went to conventional medicine. They prescribed anti-inflammatories for me, did nothing. My back was just still really inflamed. Started going to chiropractic therapy, fixed it quickly. So we can have these situations where even though the technique therapeutically may work, there may be a superstitious, either scientific superstition or spiritually superstitious basis for it, theoretical explanation for why it works. And so what do you do when you need the therapeutic effect? Well, ideally, you could find someone who practices the therapy but doesn't have the superstitious explanation for it. Or you could find somebody who has the therapy and has a, say, scientifically superstitious basis for it. They think, invisible gnomes are doing it or something, or there are antimatter subluxations that are doing it, and when there's no basis for that. And that's kind of not as problematic as when there's a spiritual superstitious basis. The situation gets dicier when there's a kind of spiritual superstition involved, where you say maybe think there's some mystical energy like your ki that's responsible for the effect, even though ki doesn't really exist as far as we can tell. It gets even dicier when you're going beyond just some nebulous, we're manipulating some kind of nebulous force here. If someone's invoking Apollo or Asclepius, or something like that as a healer, that's really problematic. And that's certainly where I would draw the line. If they're explicitly invoking a pagan deity or a demon or something like that, it's like, okay, sorry, no, I will find another practitioner. Even if I need the therapy, I'm not having deities and demons invoked over me.
Yeah.
If someone just has I think I'm manipulating an unseen form of energy here.
Yeah.
Well, I may not believe that that's what you're doing, but if I need the therapy and it's effective, well, I might be open to that. But it's getting into the dicey range, especially if they're having a spiritual overlay here rather than there's an unseen scientific energy that is being manipulated here. So I would kind of sketch the spectrum of problematicness that way. And there are certain points I would definitely bail out at, but there are others where, if a chiropractor thinks subluxations are real and it's helping me, I'm not going to challenge him too much on the subluxations because I'm not an expert there anyway.
Yeah, and that's not idolatry. There's
no.
Michelle, how does that ring with you?
That was really good. That brings me a lot of relief because it is very hard to find a Christian naturopath, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I hope that helps.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Jimmy Akin. You did it again. Another fine hour.
My pleasure.
Felt like 2 hours. Oh, wait.
It was
2
given
hours.
the pre-record. I'm telling you, that happens scarily often to me that I'm thinking about. So I think it's providential.
Yeah, I imagine it probably is because you need to get prepared for these questions that come at you.
Yeah.
And your guardian angel says, Here's a thought for you, Jimmy. You
Yeah.
should start thinking
Think
about
about this.
chiropractic for a while. Hey, if you're on the line, stay on the line. If you haven't dialed yet, go ahead and dial 888-318-7884. It's open forum, so any question at all about the Catholic faith is welcome. Mark Brumley, president of Ignatius Press, will be here next hour to answer your questions. 888-318-7884. We'll be right back with Mark and your questions right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back. Second great big hour of open forum today on Catholic Answers Live. I'm your host, Cy Kellett, and I am joined this hour by Mark Brumley. Mark is the president of Ignatius Press and the author of The 7 Deadly Sins of Apologetics. Hello, Mark.
Hey, Cy. I think I want, of course, I want you to mention my book, but I think I would rather you say the author of the book entitled The 7 Deadly Sins.
Oh.
Because otherwise it sounds like I'm the origin of them, like I invented them or something.
Yes, right. The author, yeah, I got you. Okay. No, you are not the actual author of this, but you're right.
And I'm always giving you a hard time about my book title. I don't know what my problem
I feel like you should just be satisfied that I get it right now, because I
know I should.
I had a mental block on that for a while. Yeah. I get these weird mental blocks where I just say the same thing and I go, nope, still not it. And
see, if Ignatius Press marketing director were listening to this, of course he may be for all I know, he would say, "Oh, those authors,
Oh yeah, but very picky.
You can never promote their books enough."
Well, I do want to promote something with you, Mark, before we go to questions, and we do have a whole bunch of questions.
Yes.
Ignatius Press, the largest Catholic publisher in this quadrant of the universe, in the Alpha Quadrant, you're having your 40th anniversary.
We are. We're having our 40th anniversary. We're having a dinner and then a conference the next day, Friday, November 2nd. And the conference is November 3rd here in San Francisco, St. Mary's Cathedral. And we're going to have lots of great speakers and persons and all of that involved with this celebration. It's going to be wonderful. So we've got Father Fessio, our editor and founder, the fearless leader, and then we've got Cardinal Lorenzi, who's one of our all-time authors. We've published him for decades. Michael O'Brien, the famous Catholic novelist.
Yeah.
Steve Ray, who is one of the early guys writing for Ignatius Press. Father Robert Spitzer of Magis Institute. Guy, Jesuit extraordinaire. And then Peter Kraft. And then we'll also have Mary Beth Bonacci. Some people are giving us hard times. We had all these men. They said, "Where's the women?" But Mary Beth Bonacci is going to be there. One of the issues is early on, Ignatius Press had a lot of male authors, and some of the female authors that Ignatius Press had died off there.
Really?
So we couldn't have them at the event. We've got a lot of female authors now, but the idea was to go reach back to our early authors, some of our early authors and supporters. It just so happened that a lot of those were men. So.
That's a heck of a lineup you got there.
Yeah.
That's a murderous row.
Mary Beth's going to be there too, and she and Peter Kraft are going to do this great little kind of skit-like presentation. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Just to see Peter Kraft do a skit, I'd come up for that. So that's coming up the 2nd and 3rd at the cathedral there in San Francisco. Now, is that cathedral? Is that the kind of modern-looking cathedral? I can't remember.
Yes, it is.
It's got
don't hold that against it. It's not going to be it's going to be underneath the cathedral.
No, I'm not holding it against it. I mean, I understand all the liturgy wars and all that stuff, but the interior space is actually quite striking at that cathedral. But
It is.
So you'll be underneath it.
We'll be in the conference area beneath. We'll have Mass on Saturday morning with the Archbishop and Cardinal Lorenzi, Archbishop Corleone, and who will also be speaking Friday night at the dinner. People interested, they can go to Ignatius.com and see our little banner, or they go to Ignatius.com/promotions/40, the number 40, and they can find out more.
Are you aware that we had Cardinal Raymond Burke at our conference?
I am.
I just want to say that so you know we got a cardinal too. I mean, I know you got all these cardinals and archbishops, but I didn't.
Well, and of course, he's one of our authors, one of our best-selling authors, so. And, we might have invited him for this if he had been one of our best-selling authors from the early days, or the much earlier days. So he's a more recent Ignatius Press author. But yes, it was really great. I really wanted to go to the Catholic Answers Conference this year, but I had some family issues, which required me to not do that. So
I wasn't trying to. I just wanted to assert the fact that we had a cardinal too.
And then next year, Lord willing, I'll be there. So
that'll be even better because you were there last year.
I was.
Yep. Just so you know,
And
go
I
ahead.
gave an unpopular talk on, kind of how apologists should be ecumenical,
Did you feel that you felt that your talk was unpopular?
No, I'm just teasing. Actually, I got a lot of compliments. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I thought for sure, because when you do apologetics, you're there to kind of make the case for the faith. That's part of what apologetics is about.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, you're kind of defining yourself over and against other Christians or other religions and all that. And so emphasizing that, the ecumenical dimension of things can be seen and is sometimes seen by less well-informed apologists as at odds with apologetics. Now, as I tried to make the case that no, it's part of it. Christian unity is the goal. Good arguments in Christian charity can be the means by which the Holy Spirit brings us together. Obviously, we as Catholics, we wouldn't be Catholics if we didn't believe that's where the Holy Spirit wants people to be. And so therefore we believe that through the proper use of apologetics and other things, not to reduce the whole business to apologetics, that we are promoting Christian unity, which is unity, we think, in the fullness of the Christian faith, which we see as the Catholic Church. Obviously, people we have conversations with see it differently, or they wouldn't be where they are. But anyway, my whole point is that apologetics and ecumenism need not be seen as antithetical activities.
No, right.
Even though there's a certain tension. That's all.
I can see why that was an unpopular talk. That is 888-318-7884, the number here. If you have a question about the Catholic faith, whether you are Catholic or not, your question is very welcome. 888-318-7884. Mark, line's filling up. Shall we take a call?
Let us go forth.
All right, let's start with Shane in Salt Lake City watching on YouTube Live. Shane, thanks for watching on YouTube. Your question for Mark Brumley.
Hi. My question is, what is the principle or justification from the scriptures or elsewhere for good or bad? The form, let's take the Last Supper, and for these and even baptism and these kinds of rites. And if we were to take Jesus as the primary exemplum of doing these things, why aren't these specific kinds of rites done exactly as he would have done it, or as it's recorded, at least in the instance of it, like his baptism or the Last Supper in the Gospels? What principle, what justification lets it develop, or not necessarily have to have a specific script or guideline or order?
Okay, I'm not quite sure I'm getting the distinctions or the subtleties of the question. Let me take a shot at it, and if I'm way off, let me know. Seems to me that the core or essential aspects of the sacraments, especially baptism and Holy Eucharist, that those things are found in Scripture. We talk about the sacraments, we talk about them as signs, and as signs, they have meanings, they point to realities, and as efficacious signs, they bring about the realities to which they point. And so they have what we call matter and form, that is to say, the stuff, as it were, not necessarily the physical stuff, although physical stuff is often involved, but the sensible stuff that makes up the sacrament, we call the matter, and then the form, the words that designate or help specify the meaning of the matter, which is stuff, actions, and all of that, of the sacrament. So with respect to baptism, we have the words of Jesus at the end of Matthew's Gospel, at the point of the so-called Great Commission, where Jesus says, "All authority in heaven and earth have been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." So Jesus is directing his disciples to baptize. Baptism is part of making disciples, that he has the authority to do this from the Father, to give this command. And he tells us how to do it, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So to me, the essential elements of baptism are described in this text. Obviously doesn't refer specifically to water, but the word baptism implies water. in this context, and we know from other passages of Scripture that water is employed. Then the second element with respect to the Eucharist at the Last Supper, Jesus takes bread, says, "This is my body," takes wine, says, "This is my blood." So those elements are there, and they're part of the rites associated with the sacraments. So from my perspective, it seems to me pretty clear that the scriptural, I'm going to say foundations, I think that's we can misunderstand when we talk about scriptural foundations as if we're saying that these things didn't come about or didn't exist or didn't have any meaning or force for the church until Scripture was written. That wouldn't be correct. Obviously, the church was baptizing and celebrating the Eucharist for probably decades before the Gospel of Matthew or any of the Gospels were written. But with respect to where we see Scripture teaching these things, those are some examples of where Scripture teaches about baptism and about Eucharist.
Shane, does that address what you were asking?
I think so. If there were, maybe I would have to ask another time, but it's the first point. But why, would it be a negative thing at all? Or what would allow further development? Why isn't, let's say, the Eucharist only exactly playing out how Jesus had it, like in a feast setting or something like that? Where does the...
Oh, I see. Well, So why does the church regards certain things as essential to the sacraments, and the essence of those sacraments, the essential elements can't change, and then there are aspects of the celebration of the sacraments that are changeable. Now, just because something could change in principle doesn't mean it ought to change. But there are aspects of the sacrament that are changeable in principle. With respect to the Eucharist, it certainly was the case that the Eucharist was instituted in the context of a sacred meal, the Passover meal, which was a ritual meal. You use the word feast or festival. There's a sense in which we regard the celebration of the Eucharist on Sundays as a feast of sorts, but the focus has shifted away from the Passover component. It's taken out of the Jewish Passover context because Jesus' establishment of the new covenant and the institution of that in a certain sense by his passion, death, and resurrection made the Passover for his disciples the Eucharist, not the Jewish Passover celebration, as important as that was in salvation history. But for us, that's been transcended, not done away with or treated as if it were not important, but it's been transcended. And that was the Passover was about the people of Israel, and God's purpose was to extend the covenant relationship that he had to the people of Israel to all people. And so that's why the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus's Passover, as it were, made sacramentally present in the Eucharist, is central, and we don't celebrate the Eucharist anymore in the context of that Passover meal. That Passover meal was preparatory and pointing to the Eucharist, and now that we have the fullness of the Eucharist, we don't need the Passover meal anymore for the purposes of renewing God's covenant relationship. But that's a whole other conversation.
And we will have to leave it there for now. Shane, I hope that was helpful to you. We have to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
It's the start of a new day for Morning Catholic Radio.
Isn't it the case that when you're stirring food in a pot, it burns less, because it's not just sitting there?
What about your forearms? You get some nice buff forearms when you're doing that stirring.
Yeah, let me say, I can totally get this for you, Gloria. You don't need any help stirring the pot.
You all make it so easy for me.
Morning Glory, Catholic from the start. Weekday mornings, 7 Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest, Mark Brumley, president of Ignatius Press. Don't forget their 40th anniversary is coming up November 2nd and 3rd at the Cathedral there in San Francisco. You won't want to miss it. If for no other reason, Cardinal Lorenzi will be there, and you'll want to see him. But there are many other reasons. Before we go back to calls, I've got Erica here with me.
Hi.
Hi, Erica Olson. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. You look groovy in the sunglasses.
I know. I wore them, and then look, I'm on video. Okay.
You thought you were going to.
I was like, they're like not panning over to me, and no one's going to see my really cool Caribbean sunglasses.
Those are very cool glasses. As a matter of fact, I commented to you at lunch on
I
how
know.
cool I thought they were.
And I like them because you can't tell if I'm like looking at you or not.
They're
the kind of shade.
So why are you wearing sunglasses in the studio, Erica?
Because we're going to the Caribbean.
Yes.
And by we, I mean you and me.
Yes.
Right? You're going with us.
Right. I'm going. No, you're going with us. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know who invited
Chris
who.
Check, our president, is going.
Chris Check is going. Carlo Broussard's going.
Yep.
Tim Staples is going.
Father Christensen
Bear, who took over for Father Hugh as prior at St. Michael's Abbey, is going. He's a riot. I love him, and you guys are all going to love him too. And it's going to be great. And we're going to have Mass and confession and really amazing apologetics talks on board the ship. And then you get to enjoy the Caribbean. And it's going to be great.
And the Caribbean is something that I sometimes say Caribbean. I hope that's okay with you.
I don't know which one it is.
I think it's both.
I'm good with that.
Potato.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Pirates of the Caribbean, I think is how they say it. I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up. I'm not really big with Disney.
We should take a vote. Do I know anything about Disney?
But Chris Check, our president, knows a lot about that because it turns out that's where the New World was discovered right there. So he's going to talk about Christopher Columbus. And he's going to talk about
the New World.
Maybe Cortez. I think Cortez, which he.
I'm excited. He's my. I'm not. Well, I probably shouldn't say this on air. No, I will say this on air. He's my favorite speaker.
Chris Check?
Yeah.
I assume I'm not speaking then. I assume I'm not giving a talk.
I'm sorry.
Cy
Kellett is my favorite speaker.
You go to CatholicAnswersCruise.com to sign up. CatholicAnswersCruise.com and.
Have you bought Missy a Christmas present yet?
I have not bought her a Christmas present.
It's coming up, Christmas.
Oh, so I should buy her a ticket to come on the cruise with us?
I think everyone should buy their spouse, especially for the men out there. Now, come on, what wife wouldn't like a trip to the Caribbean, especially with Catholic Answers?
Yeah, with Catholic Answers,
right?
With Tim Staples, with Carlo
Gentlemen,
Broussard. I mean, come on.
If you want to really win your wife over,
and I was talking
this Christmas,
I was talking today with
you'll want to take her to the Caribbean.
I was speaking with a famous Catholic who I will not name because he didn't say he was going to endorse, but he went on a Catholic Answers cruise some years ago. And he said the thing that was so great for him was you just sit down at lunch with, say, Tim Staples, or I don't remember who it was at that time. I think Carl Olson went on that one. But this time it would be Carlo Broussard or Chris Check or
that really is the best part.
And you talk about the faith.
That's the best part. You get intimate time with the Catholic Answer speakers and staff. And then as a staff member, and I don't know about the speakers, but speaking for myself, I love sitting down to dinner with the attendees and getting to know them. That's probably my favorite part.
And if you had to take our 4 on-air apologists and say which are the 2 that would be best to go on a cruise with, you'd probably pick Carlo and Tim, right?
Yeah, of course.
Please, Jimmy's gone, right? Did Jimmy leave the building?
Is Trent and Jimmy gone?
All right, go to Catholic Answers Cruise and sign up. Is there any kind of deal that people can get on this thing?
There's a great deal going on right now. This is seriously, we've never done this on Catholic Answers Live. We've never given this big a discount off. So if you register by next Friday for All Saints Day, you get $150 off per person by entering the promo code SAINTS online.
Oh, because of All Saints Day.
All Saints Day.
What's up?
Right?
I get it, yes.
So enter the promo code SAINTS online or when you call, and you'll get $150 off per person. on your cabin.
So bring like 10 people and you get $1,500 off.
Invite all your friends.
Yeah, that sounds like a good deal.
Gentlemen, it's the best Christmas present.
Oh my goodness, what a great Christmas present. Yeah, I've already told my wife about this. So
I would go if my husband came home and was like, I got you a cruise for Christmas, I would go crazy.
You'd go, I have the perfect glasses.
Just telling you. Yeah.
Are you going to wear those glasses all the time now?
Sure.
That's very cool.
All right.
CatholicAnswersCruise.com. Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Mark Brumley, president of Ignatius Press. Are you ready to take more calls?
I am.
All right, let's go to
Paul. You got me eager. You want me to go? I want to go on your cruise, but I'll take calls.
Well, you could probably come on our cruise. You just tell Erica you want to give a talk. She'll probably take you. She'll probably just bring you. And
right.
But you can't say anything about Ignatius Press. It's got to be all Catholic Answer stuff. So.
Oh my gosh.
Paul in Massachusetts, listening on 1060 AM, the Stations of the Cross. You are on with Mark Brumley. Your question, Paul.
Yes, good evening. What prompted my question, I was reading some of Paul's writings on marriage, and he has a lot to say, especially in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. But what really kind of intrigues me is what Paul is talking in Ephesians in chapter 5. He says that you wives will submit to your husbands as you do to the Lord, for a husband is the head of his wife as Christ is the head of his body, and so forth. And this is in Ephesians in chapter 5, verses 21 to 24. And so that begs me to ask this question, Mark, does the church have a teaching or stance on when a Catholic woman and a Catholic man do exchange vows, do become married, do become one, if the wife opts out from taking her husband's name or instead elects to either retain her maiden name in the marriage or combine her name with her husband's name, which does happen, does the church have a stated teaching or stance? Can you talk about that?
I can talk about that. I don't believe there's any teaching on that. Different cultures. I mean, I think predominantly in the West, we have what they call a patrilineal nomenclature or surname. So that means traditionally in the West, when a couple marries, the woman takes the husband's name, but not always. There are some cultures where that isn't the case. But I don't think there's any kind of Catholic teaching that obliges women to take their husband's names. The tradition is to show that these two have become one family, and you can take somebody's name. Some women hyphenate their names to retain elements of their ancestral name and their married name, although interesting enough, usually what happens is the woman who hyphenates her name is carrying over her father's name, in her father's line into the new marriage. But, people do different things with respect to that sort of thing. So I don't think there is a Catholic position on it. You can make arguments pro and con with respect to that.
Thanks, Paul. I hope that was helpful to you. I was nervous about your answer because my wife and I were hippies when we got married and did a hyphenated name.
Yeah.
And even before we maybe developed other more mature objections, we realized that was a bad idea. Hyphenated names are just difficult, and I think if we could go back and do it over, we wouldn't have done it that way. But I'm really glad.
So who had the hyphenated name? Both of you, or just your wife?
we both did it.
So what was your hyphenated name?
Jones Kellett.
And what was her hyphenated name?
Same.
Oh, Jones. Okay, I see. So you just combine your names. Yeah. So that's one possibility.
Well, we thought of just taking somebody else's name, but that didn't seem like.
Right. That's right. So you two combined your father's family names.
Right. Yeah, our family names. But I don't know if we would do it again. Try making a reservation on an airplane with it. Just everything is difficult. Just there's some sense in just doing things the way they've always been done. Maybe that sounds like an old man talking, but there is some sense. Let's go to Alex. I have to stop talking about this.
Moving right along.
Yeah, moving right along. Alex in Columbus, Ohio. Your question for Mark-Brumley.
Yeah, I have a quick question, and I don't have too much information about Halloween. And my question is it okay to participate in this celebration and decorations and then going out and request for candy in disguise?
Is it okay to celebrate Halloween, Mark?
My opinion, it is, as long as you don't, do anything inappropriate, but just the idea of dressing up, going out and getting candy, doing a trick-or-treat thing, I think that's perfectly fine. My children did it. Now, some people, because the origin of Halloween means All Hallows Eve. The Hallows part of All Hallows Eve is All Saints Day. So we're saying this is All Saints Eve. It's the day before, October 31st is the day before November 1st, which is All Saints Day in Western Christianity, at least. And so, there are all sorts of... Ooh, I'm hearing music. Maybe we should...
You want to do it? Well, let's flesh that out a little bit when we come back on the other side. Alex from Columbus, Ohio is on the line. His question, is it okay to celebrate Halloween? Mark Brumley is our guest. He's the president of Ignatius Press, and he will continue to answer that question about Halloween when we come back on the other side on Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Philip Rivers, NFL quarterback, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
What difference does it make who or what you worship, or what you believe? Sharing the faith used to make some people mad because it challenged their own strong beliefs. Today, it makes a lot of people yawn because they don't have strong beliefs about anything. Religious indifference is the great spiritual sickness of our age, a product of the relativism that dominates modern culture. This is Matt Nelson, and in my new book, Just Whatever, I'll take down the building blocks of religious indifference one by one. We'll look at the different kinds of indifference you tend to encounter in your friends and family members to see where they come from and why they're seductive. What you believe matters. Find out why and what to do about it in my new book, Just Whatever. You can order your copy of Just Whatever by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
A generation ago, Christian parents didn't have to worry about how to explain transgenderism to their 9-year-old children, or help their teenager deal with mockery at school for believing in traditional marriage. But today, as our culture decays, we have to know how to talk to our children about these issues. In Made This Way, How to Prepare Kids to Face Today's Tough Moral Issues, Layla Miller and Trent Horn give parents the crucial tools and techniques to form children with the understanding they need, appropriate to their age and maturity level to meet the world's challenges. If we're not teaching our children how to understand tough moral issues, then the world will. Read Made This Way and learn how to give your kids a firm foundation on which to build a life of moral clarity and happiness. Order your copy of Made This Way today by calling 1-888-291-8000 or logging onto the shop at Catholic.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Open forum. Any question at all about the Catholic faith is welcome, whether you're Catholic or not. 888-318-7884 is the number. Mark Brumley is the author of a book with the title 7 Deadly Sins of Apologetics, and he is also the head man in charge over at Ignatius Press, the largest Catholic publisher in the Alpha Quadrant. Why am I exaggerating? What's exaggerating about?
An editor, and I'm the president, of course, so we're a team. But that's a significant qualification. Then the other thing, the Alpha Quadrant, really?
Oh, you think it's Alpha and Delta quadrants combined, or all four quadrants?
The Beta Quadrant,
You're big in the Beta Quadrant. Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
We're in the Beta Quadrant. We got stuff that we have Klingons reading stuff.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Especially Father Fessio's stuff. Actually,
Dan Matson's book, Why Don't Call Myself Gay. It's a bestseller with Klingons. Just so you know.
I almost believe it, Mark Brumley. That's a great book too. That's a great book and a great man. You have a lot of really good books over there at Ignatius Press.
You guys have good books too. I mean, I know, but you publish one by me.
We're not the biggest in the Alpha Quadrant. Yeah, 7 Deadly Sins of Apologetics, as a matter of fact, that is published by Catholic Answers Press.
Yes.
That is sad, though, that you couldn't get your own. I don't want to go into it. John in Chicago, Illinois, listening to EWTN on Channel 130 Sirius XM Satellite Radio. You are next with Mark Brumley. Your question, please.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm appreciating this conversation. I went to a Jesuit school, and I know, Mark, you're talking about Ignatius Press, where we have the president. I've been kind of disturbed a little bit from what I've seen from the Jesuits in the past couple of years, especially from Father, I think it's Jim Martin, because he seems to have his own agenda. I think being open and being nice to the LGBT community and talking and praying with them is one thing, but he seems to almost be completely changing the definition of marriage. And I think that it's almost as if he's like a rogue or renegade priest, that saying one thing he's almost trying to change the whole catechism of the Catholic Church, that he's almost like getting this relativistic idea. And I'm just wondering, why isn't there like a head or like a higher up saying you can't just change the whole catechism of our faith just because you don't agree with it?
So if you're asking me, do I agree that you can't just change the catechism because you don't agree with it? Is that your question, John?
Why are some priests? No. My question is, why isn't there like somebody either from the order or somebody else from the Catholic Church saying that you just can't, have to. There's a limit to what you can say when a priest takes a vow. He takes a vow to uphold the sacraments, and any Catholic should as well. Why isn't anyone else trying to say you can't just change the whole catechism, the whole idea of sacraments? Because it's not okay to just be cool and hip and go on TV and say, "Oh, we're the hip Catholics. I'm this group."
Fair enough. All right. Well, I think we've got it, but let's let Mark respond to that, because Mark actually is a hip Catholic, so he's qualified to talk about this.
Absolutely, man. And you don't have the webcam on today, but if you did, you would see how hip
you are.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we have the teaching of the Church, and while there may be, some theological subtleties and things that can be put different ways by this guy or that guy, at its core, the Catholic Church's teaching is clear. And so if a priest is out saying and doing things that are making that less clear or unclear, or actually contradicting it, that priest shouldn't be doing that. And we have bishops and we have heads of religious orders who are responsible to make sure that the priests who collaborate with them and who are under their authority accurately represent the teaching of the Catholic Church. Now, some do bishops and those responsible in religious orders always do that or always do it well? Unfortunately, no. But of course, many bishops do it well, and many superiors in religious orders do it well. So we don't want to generalize and just say the bishops aren't doing their job, or the superiors of religious orders aren't doing their job. Now, with respect to specific things like LGBT and all that kind of thing, I mean, my own view is certainly I accept what the Church teaches. I appreciate the fact that there are people trying to reach out to people who feel alienated from the Church or who don't understand who Jesus is or understand the liberating truth of chastity properly understood. I think that's great. And I would agree with the idea that you don't always lead with, in fact, you rarely lead with the bad news and say you're doing it wrong, but that doesn't mean that you can be obscure about teaching. So, I think with respect to people with same-sex attraction and other issues with respect to sexuality, we need to be honest, loving, welcoming, but we need to be clear, and the truth will set us free. So I mentioned earlier Dan Mattson, who wrote the book Why I Don't Call Myself Gay. I think that approach is the approach I think that best reflects the teaching of the Church, the pastoral desire of the Church to reach everybody, including people who experience same-sex attraction and related issues. And I would highly recommend that. Other approaches I don't recommend. And I don't think those approaches, in my view, are fully consistent with the teaching of the Church. And which is not to say that people that are pursuing those approaches aren't well-intentioned, but being well-intentioned and getting it right aren't necessarily the same thing. So that's what I would say.
John, thanks for the question. I hope that was indeed helpful. I was feeling a little sick during your answer there because not because it had anything to do with Father Martin or the question, because Alex had asked us about Halloween. We had said we were coming back to it. And we skipped right. So I have to admit, I heard only parts of your answer, Mark, because I was, you get that hot feeling like, oh no, I forgot.
What did I do?
And Alex is no longer
happens
with
to me all the time when I'm on the show.
Alex asked the question, and he's not on the line anymore, but we should give him an answer. Is it okay to celebrate Halloween with his kids?
Yes, I think it is. Now, again, as I said before we went to the break, we have to be careful because there can be a glorification of the demonic and things of that sort, and we don't want to do that. Some people celebrate Halloween by dressing up to sort of neutral things or movie stars or things of that sort. I don't know if that's neutral, but you know what I mean, characters. Some people dress up as saints. Some people dress up as, evil figures, and the idea there is not to glorify the evil figure, but to show that you make light of it. You don't take it seriously because Christians are not... in Jesus Christ, we have victory over the devil. That's some people's rationale. Even so, I would say we still have to be careful with that. If that's your rationale, you still have to be very careful because kids can come away with the idea that you're glorifying the satanic, or you're celebrating the satanic, or you think the satanic is good. So we have to exercise prudence. And I would say my general rule of thumb, even though my kids celebrated Halloween, we didn't usually let them dress up like demons and things of that sort. My general rule of thumb is you can never do anything that's wrong in and of itself, but even sometimes things that might be okay for one kid to do, you might not want to let another kid do because he might be a little bit more susceptible. So that's kind of my general philosophy. I call that my Harry Potter philosophy. People say, what's your view of Harry Potter? I said, I read all the books. I thought they were fine, but I'm a grown man. So if I'm dealing with a 13-year-old kid who's mature, that's different. If I'm dealing with somebody who's immature, obsessive, and got some other problems, I might steer him away. So they say the same thing about certain things associated with Halloween. The important thing to take away from Halloween is All Saints' Day, the next day where we celebrate all the saints of the church. That's really what Halloween's about. It's All Hallows Eve, preparing for the feast day the next day. So.
Alex, I'm sorry that I made you wait for that answer. I hope that was indeed helpful. I have to say, Mark, from me, I have a certain affection for the way we in America celebrate Halloween because it's really the only day we visit our neighbors' houses. Like America, we just stay in our houses all the time, or hardly. And it's so nice to just go around and people bring their children by, or you bring your kids by. Nobody gives me candy anymore. I'm offended at that. But
all my kids are grown and out of the house, so and unfortunately my grandchildren are in Texas and I'm in California, so I can't go around with them. But we used to have something in my family which was called a candy tax. The kids would go around.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
When they came back, they had to pay their candy tax.
Yeah, that's an important lesson too, because that's something they need to know about life too, that there's going to be taxes, that you don't just get to keep all that income. But I mean, I do think sometimes the religious objection to, the very stringent religious objection to Halloween might be missing what a beautiful kind of social opportunity Halloween is that we just don't do very much of in the modern world.
Right, and there's no reason why, if people feel odd about their kid dressing up as Darth Vader or Superman or whatever, if they feel odd about that, the kids can always dress up as saints or other religious figures, biblical characters, things of that sort. We weren't doctrinaire about that sort of thing, but there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And I know sometimes people will have a Halloween party, will dress up as their favorite superhero, and then the next day they'll have an All Saints party and they'll dress up as their favorite saint, that kind of thing. I think that's perfectly legitimate. I think there's a lot of ways in which we can raise our kids as good Catholic kids in the spirit of Christianity, and we need to leave people some room to make up their own minds.
Yeah, fair enough.
Avoid being rigid.
Do you find it odd that I dress up as a superhero when it's not Halloween? Does that present any problems to you, or are you comfortable with that?
I never really thought of that as a problem for you. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but...
The worst is when I dress up like a minion. Okay, enough, Cyril. We're right now. Hey, I don't know if you folks out there listening were listening yesterday when Trent Horn and Leila Miller were talking about their book, Made This Way. You go back and listen to it. You can listen to it on the podcast and get the book.
Yes.
It's on sale because everything's on sale at shop.catholic.com right now. You just put in CA Live 18 when you check out. Your cost goes down to $10 a copy or a 40% savings if you buy 5 copies. If you buy a case of 20, it goes down to $5 a copy. That's a 70% savings. And you can give them to people. You can share them to people. You can ask your pastor. Maybe these are, he would allow these to be left in the back of the church because people need help answering these tough moral questions with children these days. So just go over to shop.catholic.com, find Made This Way, and you will not be sorry that you did. Go ahead.
I just got my copy, and I think it's a great book. I'm going to buy lots of copies and give them away, so I encourage other people to do it. And you know what? This is not an Ignatius Press book. It's a Catholic Answers book. So
now I got to say, I got a book that I really like from Ignatius Press. I already said Why I Don't Call Myself Gay. That's a great book.
Yeah, that's a great book, too.
Yeah,
so
and
these issues are really important. So
yeah, right. Fair enough. Let's take a break. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live with Mark Brumley after this.
This is Bishop James Conley of the Diocese of Lincoln. Keep it right here on Catholic Answers Live.
We need Catholic radio because we need the voice of the church in the public forum. We live in a time that the secular voice dominates so thoroughly that we need to get that Catholic perspective out. Just as Fulton Sheen used radio and TV in the last century, we need to continue to use this means to announce the Catholic faith in the public forum.
Bishop Robert Barron thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul's Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Mark Brumley is our guest. Mark is the president of Ignatius Press. And your questions are welcome on any aspect of the Catholic faith. And as we usually do, we got probably more calls than time. So we're going to just move through them as quickly as we can here at the top of the hour, or as we approach the top of the hour. David in Oregon, listening on 88.3 FM. You are next. Your question for Mark, David.
Yes, hello. Thanks for taking my call. Now, my question is, I've heard you refer a couple times to a demon, or like the woman who asked the question about obtaining the New Age services or the massage therapy services, and as long as they weren't invoking like a demon. And I was wondering if you could define or give me an assessment or a definition of what you define a demon as.
I would describe a demon as a negative or evil pure spirit created by God, originally created by God, good, but who through the abuse of his freedom has associated himself with the devil, Satan, who is the lead fallen angel. So that's what I would say a demon is.
Okay. Yeah, and I just because we're in this time, in this current time where there's just a lot of political strife going on.
Yes.
And it's a little bit unhinging to me to hear somebody call one of the political opposition evil when there are kind of like not necessarily known or convicted, but there are other people, talking about how they conspired to pay off a prostitute or something. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't, if I had interaction with somebody like out of wedlock or whatever, where I wasn't keeping my word to myself, and to my agreement with that person, then I wouldn't want to turn around and then say, oh, well, this person on this who has a different political agenda than I do, or this group, like they're evil, you know?
Sure.
Right, yeah.
Well, of course. I mean, first of all, make a distinction between human beings who do evil things and demons. Demons are, non-human spiritual beings. So that would be one point. I mean, sometimes we refer to an especially wicked person as a demon, but that's a metaphor. We're not saying this person is literally a demon. So that's one point with respect to the question of the demonic and how we speak of other people. But your general point that with respect to political differences, I would say, my view is, we should be, as a matter of Christian charity at least, I know not everybody's a Christian, so we have to formulate it differently if we're talking about non-Christian context, but from a Christian point of view, and with respect to the Christian view of charity, I think we need to presume, as long as it is reasonably possible, the good faith of people we disagree with politically, not presume that they are evil, even if we think that their policies or the outcomes that their policies will result in evil. There's a difference between saying, I think this policy is wrong and it's going to create harm, and saying, I think the person who is promoting this policy is evil and is intent on creating harm. So that's another point. And the third point is that oftentimes there are clear-cut cases of things that are wrong. We say that's wrong, it shouldn't be the case. I think the history of this country, slavery is an example of that. I think racism is an example of that. I think abortion is an example of that. These things, I think, are wrong, but I'm not going to presume that everybody who is involved with these things or associated with these things understands that they're wrong or understands the gravity of their wrongness and therefore is wicked or evil. So I think we have to be very careful distinguishing between judging certain actions or assessing certain actions as wrong and judging or assessing the people who do those actions as evil. Not that there aren't really evil people in the world. There are.
We just don't know.
Be careful about making that assessment.
Fair enough. David, thank you for the question. I hope that was helpful. Let's go to James in Katy, Texas, listening on Guadalupe Radio. James, your question.
Thank you. I have a question about ecumenism and, well, are there certain religions that aren't worthy of respect, particularly about witchcraft, modern witchcraft, which is very popular in popular culture nowadays, and especially in light of Exodus 22-17.
Yes, that's true, that there are certain religious beliefs or religious systems, religious practices that are not worthy of respect. How you interact with people who engage in those practices, espouse those beliefs, participate in those rituals is a different question. You should always respect them as persons, but respecting someone qua person doesn't mean that you agree with what that person believes or you think good what that person does. So we have to make some distinctions.
James, that was very clear and quick question. Appreciate that. We always respect persons, but we don't always have to respect beliefs. Would that be a fair summary?
Absolutely.
All right, let's try Sarah in Dallas, Texas, listening on 9:10 a.m. Sarah, your question for Mark Brumley.
Hi. Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
My question
Hi, Sarah.
for today is how do you react or what attitude should we have when talking to a person who believes that Catholics are not Christians, and when they go even as far as to say that the Pope, every single Catholic popes are devil worshippers?
Yeah, so I'd say, first of all, we always have to discern when we talk to people. Sometimes you should say there's some people I can't talk to because they're not acting in good faith, and therefore maybe I shouldn't talk to this person. But if you discern that this is a person that you should talk to, I think my experience is it's good to try to understand why people think what they do and ask them, why do you consider Catholics devil worshippers? And usually you find out that there's some misunderstanding of the Catholic faith. And so you can clear that up, and you can explain what Catholics believe as opposed to what people think Catholics believe. When all is said and done, after you've done that, they may still think that Catholicism is wrong, but hopefully they will see that Catholicism doesn't involve the worship of the devil. So that's a very quick answer to a complicated question, but I hope that gives you some direction.
Sarah, thank you for that call. We go now to Dan in Seattle, Washington, listening on Sacred Heart Radio KBLE. Dan, your question for Mark Brumley.
Hello, gentlemen. I have a question on forgiveness. I don't know if you'll be able to answer it as quickly and succinctly, but I was talking with a Jewish friend the other day, and they're good friends. We agree that we worship the same God, about forgiveness, and he told me that Jews are not required to forgive, although they're certainly required to seek forgiveness on Yom Kippur and other times. But I believe that Christians are not only required to forgive, but, and he also said that we forgive when the person who was given us offense shows some sort of penitence.
Right.
But I don't think that remorse has anything to do with Christians' forgiveness. Jesus forgave those who were killing him as he was hanging on the cross, and they didn't show any signs of remorse. So am I wrong? How does forgiveness work? Are we required to forgive even if the person who has offended us shows no remorse?
Yes, this is a complicated question. We'll try to get to it, try to summarize the answer quickly. We're always required to forgive, but that forgiveness can take on different forms. At the heart of forgiveness is the willingness, the desire to will the good of the other who's offended me. So someone has done me wrong, I still have to will that person's good. Now that doesn't mean, in fact, it can actually mean that I require something of that person to establish a full atmosphere of reconciliation, but I still want that person. I still will that person's good. I'm not allowed to want that person's harm for the sake of that person's harm. So obviously, full reconciliation occurs in the instance when somebody has offended another person, and the offending party has come to see the nature of the offense and has asked for forgiveness. But even short of that, the party that is offended, the one that's harmed, still has to will the good of that other, still has to extend charity to that other, and still has to act in a way consistent with willing the good of the other. So that may mean that we're uncomfortable because there's this person that's been a jerk to me and has not fully understood that he's been a jerk to me, and I still have to interact with him, in a reasonably polite way, and I have to do that. But that doesn't mean, and it may be that I recognize my limitations, and I might try to avoid interacting with that person, not because I don't think that's a good thing to do, but because I know my limitations and I don't want to create a problem in doing it. But yes, no matter what that person has done, even if that person hasn't repented, we still have to will the good of that person. That doesn't mean we have to allow that person to take advantage of us, or we can't confront that person, or we can't hold that person to a level of accountability. Those things do not entail my not willing that other person's good. And in fact, I might require someone to, say, if someone's stolen something from me, to repay me precisely because I will that person's good, and part of that person's good is that he make restitution for the wrong that he's done. This is a complex question, difficult to discuss all the nuances in the short period of time we have.
And I hope that was helpful to you, Dan. Thanks very, very much for the question. So, forgiveness and reconciliation, these are fully human things, and they happen on many different levels.
Yes, that's right. But we should always be willing to will the good of the other and seek reconciliation, even when people have done us wrong or unrepentant. And also because sometimes they see it differently. We may be right, and they may be wrong, but they may not be culpably wrong. So we have to always have that disposition of charity to will the good of the other in all the situations.
Well, that's it for us today. Mark Brumley, President of Ignatius Press, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
Don't forget, Ignatius Press is celebrating its 40th anniversary November 2nd and 3rd at the Cathedral in San Francisco, California. You might not want to miss that. You can find out about it by searching online. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, on Catholic Answers Live.